right. Welcome everybody to the BSA Healthcare Facilities presentation. This week we're joined by a team from Payette who will be presenting on the White Plains Hospital. You are eligible for 1.5 health and safety hours credit. The link is in the chat for you to fill out the form and make sure that you get those hours in. With that, I'm going to actually hand it over to the Payette team, starting with Lucia.
Hi. Actually, Chris is going to kick us off.
Okay. Starting with Chris.
So, Chris,
Thank
take it
you
away.
Chris Blomquist, I'm project architect with Payette on the White Plains Hospital expansion. So I'll just start briefly giving you a little bit of an overview on the project scope. This is a project that actually came into the office back in December of 2021 as part of initially a master plan. We had about a 16-month master plan effort to really kind of re-envision the hospital expansion over the next, we looked at it both over the next kind of 12 years up to 2033, and then the long-term vision out to 2050. We began documents post-master plan in February of 2023, and we just recently, in February of 2025, issued construction documents. Construction began in earnest the beginning of March, so there's a lot of excavation and foundation work that's just begun on site. So it's an exciting time with construction completion anticipated for 2028 for the first phase of the project. As you can see, the project size is 475,000 square feet. And some of these numbers reflect actually the 2033 fit out, which is for 240 inpatient beds. Phase one will be 144, so 3 patient floors will be fit out day one with 2 additional patient floors in the following years after 2028. In terms of the emergency department, that's one of the key programmatic drivers for the hospital. So that is a key component of phase one. So really most of the emergency department expansion will be completed by 2028. And then in terms of the ORs, 3 ORs of the 9 will be fit out or completed in 2028, with the others hopefully following shortly thereafter. And that will also sort of build out the rest of the prep and recovery. Go ahead, Lucia. So just to introduce the team that will be presenting today, Shaun will present the exterior. He has been leading the design of the exterior and the core and shell. Eamon Mahar will be presenting the clinical planning, one of the key clinical planners on the team. And then lastly, Lucia Valentin, who has been really spearheading the interior design for the project. Just to orient you a little bit to the site, so the site is actually an interesting one within the city of White Plains. It falls really at sort of a dividing line between the more urban downtown area to the north of the site, and then a smaller scale residential neighborhood to the south. There's quite a bit of topography on the site. One side of the site from the residential side slopes down about 16 feet to the more urban side. So we have 2 entries on the project that you'll see, one for kind of the public, and then the emergency department, which is on the north of the site. The site is also interesting in the sense that it sort of bookends the existing campus as they have it. So you can see in the image on the right, in the foreground, that large building is their most recent building. That's the CAMS building. And our building, which will be where the asterisk is sort of the bookend to that. The hospital has purchased all of the land to the west of the site, and so that's really the kind of the component that makes up the vision between 2033 and 2050, where they expand and how they expand in the future. So that was a big part of the master planning effort that Shaun will touch on. Just giving you a sense of kind of the material palette and the existing campus. You know, it has really evolved over the last 70 years and kind of grown in a way that I think the hospital was looking for us as part of this effort to really create a vision and a unifying vision for the hospital, both in kind of the materiality and the scale, and also finding ways to introduce kind of landscape, landscape language around the site that gave an overall presence and kind of a unifying element to the campus. So this is just showing you the newest building, the CAMS building, gives you a sense of the more modern palette on the campus, and then they have a new that green glass building to the right of it is a new cancer center that they recently completed as well. With that, I will turn it over to Shaun.
All right, thanks, Chris. Hello, everyone. So just to kind of give you a sense of that timeline that Chris described, starting with a master plan and leading through our first sort of take on this was, well, from the very beginning, we started with a master plan that actually was developed with White Plains Hospital with the help of Perkins Eastman. So on the very left, you can see the existing kind of master plan document that we received, the massing of the building, which bookends the campus, as Chris described, and setting up a main front door kind of facing Maple. So Maple's kind of, in all the drawings that we show you, will be on the south side, or plan south or image south. So you can see the pink line indicates a kind of a drop-off scheme. So as we kind of digested the master plan, really dug into the thinking that went into it, immediately we started thinking about the future 2050 vision with the large swath of land to the west that the hospital purchased, and deciding that, how we're going to orient, how we're going to start massing. So we came up with three schemes. That first one, what we call the enhanced master plan, was really just to break up the larger mass. One of the things that we were sort of challenged with was some of the large surface faces that you see facing Maple, facing back toward the hospital in the original master plan. So starting to break up the massing was really the first move, and creating some green spaces and gardens and potential for courtyards and things like that would get us natural light into the podium of the hospital. And then from there, thinking about the opportunities on the site for setting up multiple entrances, a next step in a model that we created was sort of shifting those two masses. So taking two inpatient towers and shifting them. And what that allowed was an opportunity to investigate multiple entrances for different types of users on the site, because it is a large hospital. It has an ED department, it has a general entrance, and you can imagine the loading and the staff and all of that. So, and that was kind of, step two. And then step three was, well, what if we really broke this up and we shaped the inpatient towers in such a way that allowed multiple entrances and start to have an attitude about how inpatient rooms would both relate to each other and to have better views, and start addressing some of the context. And I'll start to explain that in the next slides. So here's a kind of overview of our design model. This was a sort of a master plan model that we built. It's a 30-second scale model, but it's about the size of a conference room table. And we use this to sort of move blocks around, to test out ideas, and to always be thinking further ahead in the future than just our building, which is outlined in the thicker line there. And how the model that we create with the new inpatient building could be replicated or could be scaled in such a way that as we expand out west, that scale of a building was appropriate and was relatable as an extension of the original legacy hospital. And so by thinking that way, what we conceived of is this idea of a hospital that was a linear hospital. A hospital that would be connected east and west, all the way on the right with the CAMS building to all the way out west to the expansion areas, and then thinking about how can we shape the new inpatient building in such a way to set up a landscape architecture idea that brought a boulevard and green space along Maple, such that all of the main entrances of the building have a very generous greenscape and front yard, essentially. So then, zooming in a little bit to the inpatient tower and the way that we shaped it, it had all to do with addressing the major gateway corners in the campus, so that no matter which direction you come from, you get confronted with an opportunity, a sort of a branding opportunity for the institution at the center of its campus. So now the new inpatient building is really sort of the central building in the campus. And then zooming in a little bit, breaking apart in such a way that the inpatient rooms themselves have access to natural light and daylight, while expressing that idea of the linear campus cutting through it. And you'll see when we get inside the building how that has affected everything to do with the planning and of the public spaces as well. So here's a kind of this is looking at the main entrance level in terms of the landscape and the way that we shape the podium of the building, sort of set much further in to allow all of these wonderful outdoor rooms. So you have the main drop-off area and the ED drop-off to the north, as Chris mentioned, which is one story below, actually, because the site slopes from the main drop-off area toward the north by a full level. And then we have carved out of the podium these terraces, gardens, and a wonderful pedestrian loggia on the south, underneath the south pavilion. Here I'm just going to kind of really quickly give you a sense of how the hospital works in terms of circulation around the site. We have the main entrance, and that's really split into two different programs. You have the Women and Children's program, which is the first part of the drop-off area, and the main entrance right in the center at the point where the existing building meets the new building. And then we have the emergency drop-off on the north. Staff are using the north side as well at a separate entrance, and we have a loading dock that we've stitched from the existing campus, so that our new building is using the existing loading dock, and we've worked out the circulation of materials and staff through sort of corridors in between the existing and the new. You can see we have an ambulance drop-off area on the north, and then we've maintained fire truck lanes. And as part of that, we can go to the next. So now just thinking about the material palette, Chris kind of showed you the material palette of the existing campus. And the way we thought about it originally was that you kind of have this large brick building, the CAMS building, all the way to the east, right-hand side, which is one of their newer projects from 2020. Then you've got limestone, more brick. You start getting into precast as you move further west. And then finally, one of their newer additions, the Mod 2, is a fully metal panel building. And so we thought initially that we would have a combination of kind of a limestone, glass, and metal panel building to set up a sort of an evolution from east to west in the campus language. And very quickly, we kind of sort of pivoted. In the next slide, you can see how really we're reestablishing this sort of brick and more institutional material as a kind of a bookend in the campus, where you have the two new buildings on the east and the west bookending what is a lower kind of campus profile with granite, limestone, and brick. So interestingly, in SD, at the beginning of SD, we had a building that looked. So this is sort of an evolution of our facade, the design of the exterior. On the left is sort of very early models that we did, just ending the master plan. When we sort of come up with this language of limestone and glass, much more glassy scheme. And as things developed, we and you know, taking things like budget and language in consideration, pivoted to a sort of more metal panel building, playing with shaping metal panel and a kind of fully unitized curtain wall, which would really help us, help the team kind of streamline the construction schedule, realign the project to the budget, and all of those things. But then, you know, as we got into DD, there was a real paradigm shift from, as I mentioned, from metal panel to brick. So the project that I'm going to show you now, which is now, it's where we've completed 100% CD and getting into CA, the construction site is activated. There's holes in the ground and cranes are up and running. And what I'm going to show you is the building on the right, which is a brick building, and it's actually a precast facade with intermittent strips of unitized curtain wall. So let's go and dive right in. So here's the main kind of the main entrance. You can see the existing hospital on the right, the white metal panel building, the main entrance there below it, and a canopy that stretches across the existing buildings. And on the left, you can see the loggia on the lower level with these combination of limestone and brick columns. Beyond those columns is you start to see all of the public spaces of the building that string a promenade across from the main entrance all the way to the cafe on the left. And then hovering over everything is the inpatient facade and the inpatient pavilion, sorry. And so when you take a step back and you look at the main entrance, you can see how we're intending to kind of stitch the campus together, unifying the campus with this integrated canopy, women and children's entrance on the right-hand side, the main entrance sort of right in the middle, the logo, and on the left, the two patient towers split in the middle, and a generous public space in the center. Let's go to the next. Moving in underneath the canopy, you can see how the canopy sort of integrates. It starts to kind of, you know, really sort of start to tie the elements of the existing building together. You can see there's a number of disparate elements that are coming together here. The columns, the drop-off area, coordinating the length of driveway, and detailing the canopy to be sort of really covering the entire drop-off area. So it's a very comfortable drop-off area, completely covered from the elements, with lighting and even some heating elements on the lower level underneath that bridge that you see there, and opening up the entire promenade with curtain wall facing the garden. Here is where we've kind of moved further to the west. We're now at the corner of the building, and this is what I was referring to when the building kind of splits and is now kind of fully facing the corner. It's this opportunity to kind of provide a gateway to their campus. Here underneath the logo, you can see the entryway, the pedestrian entryway to that loggia. The cafe is underneath it. On the left, where we've split the two buildings apart, there's a terrace, and the terrace is very well protected from, you know, all the hustle and bustle of the city. It's sort of tucked in, and it's we hope a lovely place for families and you know, the families visiting their patients and the staff to enjoy. Here you can kind of see the other corner. So now we've kind of moved north, and we're looking at the other face of the north pavilion. You can see that the way we've thought about the facade, there's sort of really three main facades, three main kind of tectonic elements. The first is the base, which is granite and limestone, really providing that strong sense of plinth underlining the building. And then on top of that, you have the patient pavilions, which facing the long facades, facing north and south, both on the outer and the inner kind of courtyard areas. Those vertical strips are the patient room windows. And we developed this concept of a frieze. At the base, you see where we have textured brick. We're kind of integrating the louvers. So that's the level 4 mechanical zone where you see the louvers at the base of the building. And then at the very top, that's repeated with more louvers in an upper frieze. The ends that we're looking at with the vertical fins are mostly curtain wall, and those are given to the ends of the corridors and the patient floor plan, which we're going to get into real soon, and the nursing stations, the staff areas. So 3 types of facades there. Here we're just kind of looking more eye level at some of those beautiful terrace spaces and gardens around the building and underneath the pavilion. You can see in some of these images how the columns really play a strong role in shaping of the loggia on the top right image, for example. And in the middle row there, you have 2 images taken in the terrace between the two pavilions. And then underneath on the lower level, you can see the garden underneath the South Pavilion. And we can see what we have coming up next here. So, well, that's the exterior. I'm gonna give Eamon the mic now, and then go to functional image.
Thanks, Shaun. Yeah, so moving into the building, kind of the first thing that we did kind of before we started to really dig into the design was to establish these functional guiding principles, right? So this was something that we developed with the client. They included patient-centered care, standardization and modularity, adaptability, operating and space efficiency, identity and access, and I think importantly here is creating a distinct identity for women's and children's. That was something that's very important to the CEO, and we worked through staff satisfaction, community and experience, and innovation and sustainability. So these guiding principles really became the lens through which we had discussions and made decisions throughout the process, and became a tool to allow everybody, the client, the end users, us, a tool to allow us to kind of all pull in the same direction and make decisions with this, clear focus. So going into kind of like the organization of the building, looking at this stacking diagram, you can see the existing buildings and campus on the right-hand side, and then our new building on the left. So kind of on the podium levels, what we're doing is we're kind of expanding and extending and connecting to their existing programs. So on level 1, we're expanding their existing emergency department. On level 2, we're providing a new public entrance and creating shell space for relocated and expanded radiology. Level 3 is an expansion of their procedural platform. Level 4 is that mechanical space. And then above that is the inpatient tower. So we have on day 1, 3 levels of inpatient floors and then 2 future ones above that. And one thing I'll note is we've labeled these as universal beds. And speaking to the kind of the modularity, adaptability, and flexibility, all of the patient rooms are designed to an ICU standard, right? In terms of the clearances, in terms of the number of med gases. So whereas, you might identify a single ICU floor or a single ICU unit, the universal bed, what that allows is for, in the future, if necessary, to be able to flex what was for a time being kind of used as a med surg floor, to be able to flex that up to an ICU. And that was an important aspect of kind of the design. Moving on to kind of the floor plans, looking at this in floor plan now. So again, just to orient everybody, on the right-hand side of the plan is the existing building. On the left-hand side is our new building. And these plans also are the kind of the phase 1 2028 version. So you'll see some shelf space in here. So this is the expansion of the emergency department. It includes 24 private patient rooms. So, that patient-centered care, going from, bays with curtains to private patient rooms. So 24 ED exam, 24 low acuity treatment. Those are bays, 3 walls and a curtain. We're providing for a new emergency drop-off, a new emergency entrance to the public, shifting kind of the public entrance to the new building, and then establishing kind of the connection to the existing by aligning kind of existing corridors, existing paths of circulation, aligning those between the new and the existing to kind of create a seamless flow between the new and the existing. The ambulance entry will remain, and that kind of, what that does is it kind of sets up a low acuity on the new building side to higher acuity as you kind of move throughout the space. Additionally, I'll point out that what is the existing ED entrance, once that's vacated, will become the future pediatric ED entrance. So creating, again, that distinct identity for Women's and Children's Hospital. And then lastly, kind of on this floor, highlighting what we're doing to kind of separate on-stage, off-stage flows, justifying kind of more of the public flows in yellow to the north, and then creating a dedicated kind of back of house corridor to the south. And what we're showing there kind of in the dotted line is the day 1 condition. And then the day 2 condition, straightening that corridor out. Once the future CSPD is fit out, existing CSPD can be vacated, that corridor can be straightened. I think maybe one other thing that I want to point out here, which is consistent, is something that we did was, as it relates to kind of staff satisfaction, was we really wanted to provide staff with space, with working space that had access to light and views. So in this plan, you can see the team stations we've justified to the north to allow them to have access to that light and view, but also to kind of make that edge a little bit more transparent and allow that light and view to kind of seep into the unit itself. And then this is a rendering of the what the new public or the new ED waiting would be. So moving up to level 2, this is the new main drop-off. Kind of as Shaun had mentioned, the site slopes up from East Post Road up Lexington. So whereas ED drop-off is on the north side, the main drop-off is now on the south side because we've gone up that level. So again, on day 1, you'll see a lot of shelf space in this plan because on day 1, mostly what we're providing for is the new kind of main hospital entrance. There'll also be the beginnings of a kind of a public promenade in yellow along the south there, kind of justified to the right-hand side. New cafe, and I'll point out also the public elevators there in yellow highlighted. Eventually, as kind of we move into phase 2, what's noted there as future public promenade, that's the existing imaging services. So when that moves into the new building, that will allow us to kind of extend that promenade across the entire campus, unifying the entire campus, creating, a grand unifying kind of public zone along that front face. The commitment to kind of the onstage, offstage is a very high priority for the client. So even in in the kind of the temporary condition, we're providing for kind of that back of house corridor, that separate back of house corridor. Eventually, when that promenade is complete, that corridor will move to kind of that back of house corridor will become that kind of central corridor. So it'll become that straight line similar to how it is on level 1, but on day 1, still wanting to provide for that back of house corridor. Lastly, here I'll point out we're in the process of kind of studying a dedicated, distinct women's and children's entry as well on this level. And here's kind of a look at that lobby and then the new main entrance reception desk. So level 3 is the expansion of the procedural platform. I think one thing you might notice off the bat is, we're providing again for private prep and recovery rooms. That module is almost exactly the same as the ED exam module, with the thought that, establishing like a patient care standard and brand, right? So if you're kind of, as a patient, your experience through the hospital might begin at the ED and might progress through surgery into the inpatient. So establishing that standard and maintaining it throughout the different units. In terms of the flow, we've again justified the kind of the public circulation to the north. So as patients come up the public elevators, they'll enter the unit through that east-west corridor, flow to the top, across and down. We again have also justified the team station to the north, again for the same reasons, to provide staff access to the light and view, but also to help to bring that light and view, spill that light and view into the unit, and then justified the patient transport, back of house circulation to the center there, again separating those flows. Here's a view of the surgery waiting. And then lastly, the typical inpatient floor. So this is where, on the podium levels, we're really kind of expanding and extending their existing kind of programs. Here, it becomes kind of distinct and separate. And you can really start to see kind of the form and the shaping that Shaun was talking about and how that is reflected in the plan. So this is, 24 bed units, two 24 bed units. And then again, separating the public circulation, right? Coming up the public elevators, kind of having a public waiting area and then flowing into each unit, justified to one side and then justifying the kind of the staff circulation to the other side. And then here's a look at that sky lobby, that public sky lobby as we come off the elevators.
Okay. So with that, we gave you a sneak peek of some of the interior spaces. So we want to really kind of walk you through our process into getting to that design. And so what we really wanted to do is to create a cohesive language that would translate from the exterior to the landscape all the way to the interior, just touching on some of the things that Shaun was talking about with the green spaces and the columns and all these other elements. So what we did first was workshop with the clients some keywords, just to understand what their vision was for the new hospital, like what they wanted this new institution to reflect. And so some of the words that came up were timeless was a big one, textured, curvilinear, polished, warm, futuristic, elegant. And so these really helped us to kind of start visualizing what the interiors and the finishes could start portraying. And one of the concepts that came out from other studies that we did in the interiors was the elemental nouveau. And so we explored some different concepts, and the elemental nouveau came about looking at some of their existing facilities, existing buildings, and some Art Deco and Art Nouveau movements. And so while it's a little bit made up concept, what we really wanted to do is to establish a framework that would allow us to ground the design and establish some rules that they could translate across spaces, and then could also speak back to the landscape and the exterior, so that we're all kind of in the same aesthetic world, if you will. And so the Elemental Nouveau were these two counterparts, the elemental being special features and moments in the spaces. We knew that we wanted to highlight certain walls or areas within the spaces and incorporate natural elements such as earth, air, water, flora, sky, and light. The Nouveau, on the other side, was this continuous forms and architectural language that would carry through all the spaces and would tie all these special features together. And so it became more about the architectural language of ceilings and walls and playing with shapes and forms using some curvilinear language or in some other geometries. And then the element that would tie these two together was the materiality. And so touching back on this idea of timelessness, we wanted to use natural elements such as stone, glass, ceramic, wood. So you will see all these materials that are carried through in both the Elemental and the Nouveau. And so not only were we interested in using this Elemental Nouveau as a concept that would translate across spaces, but we were also interested in how we can use this concept to translate across scale. So we were interested in using this Elemental Nouveau concept to give us some rules and some framework to even design from the desk or the smallest kind of elements all the way to floors, walls, ceilings. So even before we started designing the spaces and looking at the plans, we had a lot of fun creating these catalogs of opportunities of how the concept could translate. And so this just kind of was a way for us to kind of start brainstorming of ways that the concept could become, could differentiate different spaces. Similar for the Elemental, we knew that it was an opportunity to use textures, graphics, and colors. And so you'll see that the special features and moments, we use different ways to kind of create these kind of like highlights in each of the spaces. And once we had that, we of course started mapping out in the floor plan. And so again, we were trying to be very conscious of the budget, but we were also trying to create a patient experience that would carry the patient from the door all the way across different floors and have the patient be able to thread a needle and make connections between all the spaces through materiality and these curvilinear language. So you can start seeing here on level 2, the public floor, how we have this wood curved wall. You start seeing even the curved desk that we were exploring in the catalogs. We start seeing some areas of carpet that are separated from the terrazzo floor that create areas for seating that are also kind of curved and relate back to the landscape kind of planting areas. Again, some opportunities for use of stone in a double height space. Level 1, again, as Eamon kind of explained in their circulation and flows, of course, starting with the waiting area, that was a space that we really wanted to highlight. It put a lot of energy into making it really special. And again, the team stations is kind of a key wayfinding element to all these exam pods. So really trying to use the Elemental and the Nouveau in a way that could create a meaningful arrival for the patient into the ED. Then going up to level 3, again, you can start seeing the same elements. So this idea of having, team stations from level 1 relate to team stations on level 3, but having a little bit of a twist and using color as different ways to kind of signify each floor was, again, something that we were interested in. The waiting area, of course, being a very important area of kind of arrival. And so playing a lot with these elements here as much as we could. And then as we go up all the way to the inpatient floor, again, the sky lobby and the connector, you start seeing the use of wood, again, area carpets that have kind of like a shape to them, and then the team stations at the center, and then all the way through kind of like the smaller scale of charging stations with some colored wall covering. So we had a lot of fun also doing this model. I think it was great for the whole team to also kind of visualize in kind of X-ray mode how the plans work in like a totality. Like we're used to seeing plans individually, and having them all stacked together was just really helpful to kind of understand where the patient is going and what is the hierarchy of spaces. And so of course, where there's more material is more of the waiting areas, and as you diffuse into the plan, it just becomes more granular. So what I'm going to do now is just to end our presentation is just give you a quick tour of the interior spaces. So I'll just walk you through some renderings. This again was the reception desk that Eamon was talking about when he described level 2. So again, you start seeing the limestone behind the reception desk as a natural element that has a lot of textured, and we kind of framed it in a way with a metal frame in a wood wall. Again, the terrazzo was a material that they have in their existing hospital, so we really wanted to carry that through. Having the desk have this kind of concrete look as a way to also kind of signify this kind of like elemental and natural elements. And then you can see at the end of this view is a limestone wall in the double height space. And so, well, again, trying to tie together the exterior, the interior, and the landscape, these try to evoke some of the similar shapes of the columns that Shaun was describing in the loggia. So kind of trying to bring the outside in as much as possible, not only through the views and the glazing and the natural light, but also through the materiality. So the double height space, of course, is so great to be able to achieve in this hospital. It really kind of offers it's a decompression for the patient to kind of, or the visitor to kind of experience more natural light, and again, a moment of just kind of of respite. And so you can see here that carpet area that relates to kind of the shapes and forms of the planting on the exterior. This is a view of the cafe. Again, a lot of interior and exterior connection. You can see how we brought the metal soffit material all the way to the inside. And then we also played a lot with the lighting to also create that integration. So you can see how the linear lights from the exterior soffit also blend into the interior ceiling to create that connection. You can see here also that clerestory window is a window to the surgery waiting. So we're actually able to bring some natural light borrowed from the cafe into the surgery waiting, which is also something that we were really excited about. And here's another view of the cafe looking back. We also we worked with the client to repurpose some of their existing art, like these butterflies. They wanted to showcase them in the new building. So we've provided homes for not only the butterflies, but some other pendant light fixtures that they have in their existing lobby. And so just finding homes for these in the new building. So going down to level 1, the ED, again, you'll start seeing kind of the similar elements and motifs that we were describing. You can see here in this reception, there's another textured stone wall to kind of welcome the patient or the visitor. Again, it's creating nods between spaces like the lobby and the level 1, but also keeping them distinct. Again, the use of the 2-color terrazzo, you can see some curved walls here and curved soffits, the curved desks. This is the ED waiting looking back. You can see how like the ceiling also extends all the way to be the canopy of that drop off. So that interior exterior connection. And again, having a double height space for an ED waiting is something that we're also very excited about. The ED team station. So again, we were really trying to bring some warmth into these spaces. So the use of wood was really important. And we also played with the wall covering as kind of these special moments or special features to provide some color and texture and movement that would also kind of play into a color story as in the stacking of the building. You can see also here how the lighting was also a huge part of integrating and really enhancing that architectural language. So we really worked with our lighting designers to really enhance the architecture forms and shapes that we were trying to achieve. And all the way down to the exam room. The exam rooms for the ED wanted to be very techy. We tried also to have like a metallic kind of look P-lamp for the head wall to kind of tie back to some of the other metals in the building. And again, using wall covering that has a texture to it to kind of provide some protection, but also give some warmth to the room. And also staff lounges. We really dove into all of the spaces to make sure that they all had something special. The use of the ceramic tile is something that the staff lounges play with in terms of color and types of tile. And so again, we really try to bring the interior finishes and the concepts from the more public spaces all the way to the to other spaces like the lounges. And then going up to level 3, again, this is from the lobby. You can kind of see there the desk for the reception for the surgery. You can also see beyond that terrace that Shaun was presented earlier. So that connection to the exterior from the promenade is such a great feature to be able to have this kind of connection to the outside and the green. So again, just some views. You can start seeing some curved ceilings here again as kind of part of that language that we're using. This is the surgery waiting that has the borrowed light from the cafe. And again, using the ceiling to create some pop-ups with some backlit ceilings to also kind of become these special moments. The team stations for the surgery corridor. Again, like Eamon was saying, all the team stations face the window, which is another great thing for the staff to be able to have that kind of connection to what's going on in the outside world. And then bringing in the wood as the natural element and the wall coverings color. Also using these kind of ceilings and floors as wayfinding, not only just to signify areas for seating, but as wayfinding as well is something that we use the color differentiation to facilitate kind of wayfinding and experience. Some views of the ED exam room. This is different. We wanted to actually have more warmth and have a wood P-lamp head wall. And then finally, going up to the inpatient floor, the sky lobby. Again, you can kind of see that niche with the stone that has a colored stone, similar to the niche and metal niche that we showed on the reception desk. So you can start making those connections. Again, you see kind of an area carpet that has kind of like a shape to ground the furniture and relates to the shape of the ceiling. And all of these curves really just meant to really kind of soften some of the corners and kind of make the flow, ease the flow of the patient and just kind of visually kind of soften all the edges as much as we could. And then as you walk through these doors that you see here on the image on the left side, you will be entering the inpatient unit and you are welcomed by the team station. So again, this one's a little bit different than the others, but still using the same kind of materials and elements in a different way. You can see how the light enhances that ceiling. You can see how the curve of the desk kind of softens that corner, using glass and transparency to kind of create just different layers of spaces. And using wall covering here, as you can see on the left wall, is a gradient wall covering to kind of also type to different, to a color story that would be different on each floor by picking from this gradient color. So you can see in this case, we picked the blue from that gradient and it's reflected on the wall covering in the room. Some have more texture, some are more solid, and bringing in the warmth of the wood always as much as we can. And this is the last image. This is the inpatient staff lounge. Again, even like looking at the light fixtures in terms of scale is something that we were also able to in spaces where we were more limited in terms of what we could do, even, using just kind of like a simple light fixture that has some soft radius corners. It's also something that's a hint to the rest of the design. So that's all we got.
Well, thank you so much for presenting that. We're going to leave it open for questions now. So please feel free to either post them in the chat or just start airing them and the team will answer them.
I had a question, Mr. Shreya. You'd reserved some space in the ED for future expansion. Was that a phasing decision or was that just to future-proof the ED?
I think I think a lot of the shelf space has to do with, cost savings, and then also, like understanding the demand, for what they project for, 2028 when they open, but leaving that room for growth over time. So there's that plan actually shows a shelf space that could accommodate another 24 exam rooms. And then below that is the ED staff lounge. That also has a plan, if needed, to relocate that staff lounge and rebuild it someplace else so that the ED could expand another 24. So at the end of the day, there's potential growth for up to 48 more ED exam in this plan.
Thank you.
Thank you for presenting them. Hi. Yep.
Hi, this is Sarah. I mean, thank you for sharing. It's such a beautiful and elegant building, and just the way its interior and exterior are woven together is just really lovely to see. Can you talk a little bit more about how each wing of the tower meets the ground plane differently and why you made that decision?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for your question. So, it really has to do with the way that the geography works, right? As you heard, there was the Maple Ave on the south was 16 feet higher than East Post Road on the north. And when we split the inpatient pavilion into two, it really made sense to ground one of the pavilions on the north and allow the one on the south to float, which, in keeping with the landscape architecture concept, which was that generous greenscape boulevard along Maple Avenue, floating that south pavilion up over that created all of this public space and terraces underneath it. It's a little, I guess it was a moment in the early schematic design that was kind of like it was a very not an intuitive move, because you'd want to kind of ground the upper building on the higher landscape and kind of allow the lower one to float. We did the opposite, and what that did was it gave us all those opportunities. We kept it strengthened the landscape concept. And we always felt like it was really important that the landscape kind of embedded itself into the public spaces of the building. And so that was really part of the decision-making there while we did that.
And it's also create a covered walkway to connect back to the West Campus for the future expansion.
Yeah.
I would say there's also a little bit of a mechanical component to the massing ending up that way. The fourth floor is entirely mechanical, but the north portion of the fourth floor serves the podium level. So there's, all of the infrastructure to serve the ED, DORs, and radiology is sort of within that volume. On the south side, mechanical is really just serving the patient floors above. So there's very, I would say, little crochet kind of in that level 3 zone in the south pavilion. So it allows us to kind of open up the facade there and really get that public presence.
I think I'll just add one more thing. As you're kind of I'm sure you're well aware of and everything, and there's this kind of movement of podium and tower kind of massing partie that permeates all of the recent hospital projects of the last 20, 30 years. And we were interested in trying a paradigm that subverted that a little bit. So the podium tower partie is subverted somewhat by that move as well.
Thank you. And then can I ask, I mean, everything is so refined and kind of minimalist, which I guess were some of the words that your users supplied to you, but was it hard to sell that concept on the interior, or was everybody on board from the start?
I think, I mean, yeah, it was a process for sure. I think the words really helped us. I think, you know, we really kind of started with like the more public spaces, and then we dove into the clinical spaces. And of course there was a budget concern, but I think in a sense, you know, it wanted to be a fairly clean kind of design, very clear, and not overwhelming in terms of the amount of finishes and materials that we're using. I think something that they could replicate easily if they expanded. You know, it's things that they already kind of an aesthetic that they were carrying already from the existing. So I think overall it was pretty well received in terms of how the concept evolved. We did have, of course, some VE, which stripped some of these elements further back, and maybe that's where the minimalist aesthetic kind of looks. I think we definitely had started with maybe more. But then I think once we took those elements away, no one really missed them. And so I feel like that kind of also showed the strength of the concept and how, you know, but sometimes less is more.
Really beautiful. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? Okay. If not, make sure you fill out the form to get your credits. And thank you so much. We have actually 2 events coming up in the next month that we'll be sending out information for in the coming weeks. So, and if you have any ideas of something you'd like to see presented or tours, please let us know. We're always very welcome to ideas. Thanks
Thanks so
everybody.
much.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.